Okay, before we even get into the video, if any of you have a tripod for your phone that you like and that doesn't fall apart and actually does what you want it to, please let me know what it is down below in the comments because I really need to get one. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. Somehow it is already a month into 2023. I know I start every wrap-up video with some sort of comment along those lines, but seriously, time. How does it pass so fast? Where does it go? As I said, it's time for a wrap-up. I read a whole bunch of books in January. The first chunk I'm just going to run through super quickly because I have a vlog where I reviewed all of them in a fair bit of detail. That was my 7 books in 7 days reading vlog that you can watch up here. The books that I included in that were Fabled Passages by Margaret Pinard, a collection of speculative fiction short stories. The Björkan Sagas by L.T.C. Johnson, a weird sci-fi fantasy mythology, just generally amazing book, but very hard to describe. Feminism for the 99% by Cinzia Arruzza, Tithi, Bhattacharya, and Nancy Fraser. This is a non-fiction feminist manifesto. Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons, a comedic novel from the early 1930s that I very much enjoyed. Tibet on Fire, Self-Immolations Against Chinese Rule by Tsering, Woeser, and translated by Carrico, non-fiction book about protest self-immolations in Tibet. And Narrowboat by L.T.C. Rolt, a book from the 1940s about canal boating in the UK. As I said, you can watch the vlog for the complete wrap-up because I took no notes and filmed all of my responses as I was having them, so they're, there and fresh. I also have just a quick mention for The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien and edited by Christopher Tolkien. This is Tolkien's history of the first age of Middle-earth, and I was reading it as a sort of quiet, cozy thing to read before falling asleep. I love it. I've read it many times. I have absolutely zero review for it at this point in time because, as I said, I just read it to fall asleep. I wasn't reading it to think about it at all. This next book I did think about a lot, but I also have a review out for it already. And that is Monkey King, Journey to the West, probably by Wu Cheng'en. And this edition was translated by Julia Lovell. It was an absolutely incredible book. I loved it so much. Part immortal, part demon monkey, causes mischief, and then goes on an adventure. It was so fun, so snappy, just an amazing classic. I obviously expected to enjoy it. I don't buy books or read books that I think I'm not gonna like, but I did not expect to enjoy this nearly as much as I did. It was so good. So make sure you check out that review up here if you think you might like to give it a read. And now we come to the books that I'm actually going to be reviewing in this wrap-up. The first of those is The Green Mill Murder by Kerry Greenwood. This is the 5th Phryne Fisher novel. I don't think I read a single Phryne novel in all of 2022, which is just ridiculous and something I want to fix a bit in 2023 because I love these books so much. For those of you who have joined us in the past year, I guess, Phryne Fisher is a detective in 1920s Melbourne. She's incredibly fabulous, incredibly fun. If you like descriptions of clothes and food and drinks and just the atmosphere, I think you will love these. I know some people find them kind of a bit too description-y, which is fair, but that's something that I like in books, so I just love getting swept up in Phryne's incredibly glamorous world. I've gotta love a main character who rocks so many dressing gowns. If you guys have seen my vlogs, you'll know that I am always in a dressing gown, and while I'm sure Phryne's are far, far more glamorous than my cozy purple ones, I just love that she's wearing dressing gowns so much. And it kind of makes me want to get a really fabulous vintage one as well. Anyway, The Green Mill Murder is a murder mystery. That's what these are. A man is murdered on the dance floor and Phryne is launched into a complicated web of relationships and motives is what I wrote in my notes. But that's literally every single one of these books. They're murder mysteries. That's how they work. I have the note that there's incredible atmosphere. I think I've covered that. Dangerous adventure. Special to this one, a wombat. The wombat in this is so good. And if you would like to see more wombats in your murder mysteries, then check this out. I switched it up a bit with a graphic novel that was Rat Queens, Volume 1, Sass and Sorcery by Kurtis J. Weeb and Rock Upchurch and Ed Bryson as the illustrators. This is a trade paperback bind-up of the first 5 issues of the comic. I think it's from like 2013. I don't know how I'd never heard of this before, but it just like jumped off the shelf at me. Not physically, but like I saw it and I was like, oh, what's that? And then I read the back, which said it is Buffy meets Tank Girl meets crazy wild fantasy setting. And I would also add, in that crazy wild fantasy setting, major Dungeons and Dragons vibes. So fun. Such a great introduction to the characters, to the type of adventure, I think. The story was developing so nicely and I found the pacing really engaging. The genre and the tone are just like the sort of book I like. They're humorous, but not like a comedy, you know what I mean? And this like walks that line very well, I think. It was high stakes, there's lots of action and drama and comedy, and it like all works together really well. Very, very enjoyable. And it has to get an award for the fastest reading turnaround that I've had in a very, very long time. I picked this up, as I said, on a total whim on a Saturday morning, and I read it in one sitting that Sunday afternoon. There's 6 volumes in total, and I very much expect to buy the other 5 next time I'm in that part of town. I would have already bought them, except I'm only in that part of town like once or twice a month, so I'm waiting until I'm there again instead of, taking the bus halfway across town just to buy them. Only because it's January and I don't want to wait for the bus. Next up, I read A Hatful of Sky by Terry Pratchett. This is number, I think, 33 maybe in the Discworld series, and number 2 in the Tiffany Aching series, which is actually a series of YA novels. This takes place 2 years after The We Free Men, in which Tiffany faces off against the Queen of the Fairies to get her sticky little brother back. Not because she particularly likes them, but because, goddammit, he's her little brother and no one is taking him. So Tiffany is now 11 years old and old enough and ready to leave her home and travel to learn how to become a witch a bit more and actually get some training and learn how to use her powers. There are some major growing pains. She made some major mistakes, and as is sort of the vibe with this sub-series, has to face some consequences and learn how to deal with it. This was a book that I absolutely adored as a child and as a teenager. For those of you who've seen me in the summertime, I have a tattoo of a witch's hat full of stars on my left arm that is directly inspired by this book, by the contents of this book, by the cover of this book. That is how important this book was to me and is to me. It actually took me quite a while to get started on this reread, though, because some of the things that Tiffany goes through are so relatable and so still viscerally painful to me. 15 years on from when I went through similar things as a teenager. I think I was really afraid to start reading it because I was worried the whole book was just going to be that feeling. I don't know why I was afraid, because as soon as I got started, it was great and I loved it. And Pratchett's writing swept me away and I was so happy. And yes, there were those stressful scenes that I remember. They exist. They are there, and they were stressful. But in a way that I found, I just started reading faster, and it was engaging and flowing. Those parts in my head were half the book. And actually they were a chapter. I did not need to be as worried about it as I did, and I'm really glad that I read it. It was just as impactful now as it was when I was a teenager, and it's also still just a really fun story with incredible humor. I then read Amnesty by Lara Elena Donnelly. This is the 3rd and final book in the Amberlow Dossier series. It's set in a fictional world with a heavy 1920s vibe. And the first book follows sort of the events leading up to the takeover by a fascist government in this one country. The second book is about the resistance movement that's forming against that government and that sort of thing. And the third book takes place after this fascist government has fallen and follows the characters sort of trying to figure out their lives again in this country that is just starting to take tentative steps towards restoring order and normalcy and democracy and that sort of thing. I think this was actually probably my favorite of the whole trilogy. Obviously, I liked the first two a lot. I wouldn't have gotten to the third book if the first two weren't any good. The, espionage and political maneuvering and that sort of stuff from the first two is going strong. Loads of it in this one. I really love to see how that played out. But I feel like the interpersonal relationships also reached a new high in this final installment. Even at the beginning of book one, all of our characters are kind of on the grubbier side of morally gray. None of them are great people. A lot of them do really shitty things many times throughout this series. But Donnelly has done such a good job of not only writing that in a way where you can still like them as characters even when they're being kind of awful or doing things that they shouldn't do, because she writes it in a way that you understand them. But I feel like in this one, she especially did a great job of showing the impact that this takeover war, I don't know what exactly to call it, but that this event has had on them and the repercussions of the trauma that everyone in this book has been through really comes through. And that sounds so dark and depressing, and it kind of is, but in a way that was enjoyable and that I loved. And the last book that I read in January, I actually finished it at lunch today, it is the 31st when I'm filming this, was Elvis in Vegas, How the King Reinvented the Las Vegas Show by Richard Zoglin. This is, I guess, theoretically about Elvis's time performing in Las Vegas and how that impacted, as the title says, how shows are done in the city. I don't feel like that actually really describes what this book is largely about. Elvis doesn't start performing in Vegas until chapter 6 out of 7. The first 5 chapters are almost entirely about the history of Las Vegas shows up until that point, which, yes, obviously you need to establish what the status quo was before if you're going to talk about reinventing, but it felt like there were more chapters about Frank Sinatra's shows in Las Vegas than there were about Elvis's, which is fine. It was interesting enough, but don't tell me you're going to talk about reinventing the Las Vegas show if you're going to give me 1.5 chapters about that, and only a very brief half chapter about the onward effects. You talk about reinventing the Las Vegas show, but it's really pretty scant about what impact he actually had and how that change persisted past Elvis's time. Overall, this was interesting enough that I didn't want to DNF it, but I didn't find it super well written or structured. If you're not an Elvis fan or a Vegas fan, it's probably not that interesting. If you are an Elvis fan or a Vegas fan, then you've probably already read better books on this topic. At least that's my sense. So those are all of the books that I read in January. It was a really good reading month. Other than a couple of these, I loved so many of them. There were so many great books that I read and that I picked up and that I had a lot of fun reading. So I really can't ask for much more than that. Let me know down below in the comments, what was your favorite read in January, and did your reading year get off to a good start? I hope it did. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, make sure you hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.